Hey guys, Mono here, and today I have the advanced garrison placement guide. This video is going to involve a whole lot of strat sketch. I'm probably not going to use any footage from the game at all. I'm just going to use the maps and talk about garrison placement. So, let's get started. First of all, the basics. In offensive mode, you start with some garrisons already built by the game. These garrisons cannot be exploded with bazookas or by a tank or anything. They have to be manually dismantled, and they do not abide by the 200-meter separation rule from other garrisons. So you can build a garrison right next to them, no problem, which gives you a lot of options to keep your players alive. Think about these garrisons basically as indestructible half-tracks, if you will. So yeah, that's one thing. Second, a bad garrison is better than no garrison, especially if you're trying to maintain momentum on an attack. So say for example that we are starting to cap, right? We are starting to put pressure on Rue de Gambosville, and we are whatever, like a quarter through the cap or something. You could potentially build a garrison here that's going to be extremely exposed, but if this allows you to maintain momentum on the attack, even for just a few minutes, if you manage to get some spawn waves in, even if that garrison is in the middle of an open field, it doesn't really matter. You can always take it down later, and it doesn't matter, right? So keep that in mind when you're in the attack, when you want to keep some momentum, that a bad garrison is better than no garrison at all, right? And the same goes for just placing garrisons around the map. If there's a bad squad leader running around and you can at least get him to build a garrison somewhere and he builds it in the middle of the road, then, it's not the end of the world. You can always move it later. Yes, it will have a negative impact because that garrison is probably going to get camped or easily destroyed, maybe. But especially if you're winning, it doesn't really matter. And I would rather have a bad garrison than no garrison at all. Another really basic concept before we get into the more advanced concepts is the start of the round. At the start of the round, you want to take a look at the layout. For example, here we got Barn, we got Rue de la Gare, AA Network, Hugo's Farm, and the Corner. Those are the sectors that we got drawn this time in this map. And here as the Allied, the supply truck spawns in mid HQ. You want to make sure you don't get the supply truck stuck, and you want to take the supply truck to build garrisons at the start of the game. Now, keep in mind, the supply trucks dump a huge crate, so that makes it very easy for recon players later in the game to spot those garrisons and be able to take them out very easily. So if at all, if you can find a spot where you can dump the supply box under cover, like behind a house or something, that would be ideal, but don't worry about it too much. What you want to do is obviously get that garrison up as fast as possible, because the faster you get the team on the point, the more chances are you're going to win the early battle for mid. Now, ideally, what you would want to do is take your support player, get the supply truck, put a garrison, somewhere strategic for the backup point, like drop supplies and maybe get a garrison here in this sector. So if you lose Rue de la Gare, you still have this garrison somewhere here, maybe on the radar here, and then go when the match actually starts, then you want to go and build the other garrisons and get into the point. Now, depending on how many squads are actually going to build garrisons, you can talk about that during the round start. You maybe want to set one of those boxes, just keep it on the truck, and then park the truck somewhere in the red zone for a future garrison if you happen to lose mid. So say, for example, we lose mid and I park that truck here and dump some supplies. Then I can get a very quick red zone garrison that's probably not going to get locked, right? Because it's too early and the enemy are probably just, pushing into AA Network from, like the middle HQ and stuff like that. They're pushing there. Most of them are going to be around this area here, somewhere here, stuff like that. So if you put a red zone garrison off to the side, somewhere that allows you to push later into an attack, get around them, maybe destroy their garrisons, this is a really good use of that second box of supplies at the start of the round. It's very, very helpful. If you see an engineer taking the supply truck, then please get him to stop. Talk to other squad leaders, find out who is in his squad. Do not shoot him, do not TK him, but try and get him to stop the truck and not use the first supply truck for node construction. Node construction should always be secondary to garrison construction. This is 100% true at any moment throughout the game. Now let's talk about ideal garrison placement. Let's take a look here at SME. Now, most of the people, if you're attacking Hospice as German, you want to put a garrison down in this area right here because there's a couple of hedgerows that will give this garrison cover, right? And it's also going to be at the closest possible location that will allow you to attack Hospice with the minimum amount of downtime possible. The other good Gary position here is right there, where you can also attack Hospice. However, putting garrisons like this is very, very obvious, right? Taking a look at Carentan, for example, in Carentan we have the same situation here in the canal crossing area. If you want to attack customs, you probably want to build a garrison around here and a garrison around here somewhere and use those to attack customs. Now, the problem with this ideal garrison placement is that it's not actually hidden. Like, they are good places to hide the garrison, but everyone knows that you're going to build a garrison there. So actually, building the garrisons a bit further back can sometimes be beneficial. Now, I'm not going to say do this all the time, don't, but maybe putting the garrison here or maybe putting it here. You know, if you find the garrison is constantly being taken down, then that's a good way to change things up so it's not super obvious where you're building your garrisons. The further back you put a garrison on your own sector, let's say we got the canal crossing sector here, the further back we put the garrison, the safer it's going to be from enemy attacks, right? Say if we put the garrison here versus putting it here, the orange garrison, as soon as the enemy crosses, they're going to run into this garrison, right? However, if the garrison is in the on the green side here, the enemy team is going to cross. They are probably going to head to the strong point and not going to check this area. So that gives you some time and some distance to be able to counteract the enemy team. I would recommend doing this specifically when you think your team is going to push too hard and not going to fall back on defend. Placing a garrison a bit further back forces them to defend at least until they get up onto the front lines. You never ever, except for maybe some exceptions, want to place a garrison on the strong point itself. Let's look at the town center area. If you put the garrison on town center, even behind this building, which is something that a lot of people do, yes, that garrison has a lot of defenses around, and he can maybe even sustain a bombing run under ideal situations, but chances are this garrison's gonna get RD'd or bombed to hell and back every single time, right? So if you lose that garrison, the other garrisons are gonna be way too far back for you to be able to properly counteract a cap on town center, right? Let's say you got some garrisons here and so on. If you lose the one in town center, it's going to take a while to go back. However, if you build them around town center and not, exactly on town center, then you can have garrisons that are going to be closer to town center and, are going to allow you to fall back into that sector way more quickly. Hopefully that makes sense. This is one of those situations if you get like ruins here. So let me clear this up. Let's say you got ruins and the town center sectors as part of your map draw, basically. If you build a garrison on ruins, then you're definitely not going to be able to do this, right? If you build a garrison here, then you can't build that garrison here because that one's going to be too far close. So you want to think about those situations when you first look at the map at the beginning of the game. And as you're placing garrisons, you always want to keep in mind where you're going to build your next garrison. Or rather, how the garrison you place is going to affect other garrison placements further down. Remember to use your observe mark or defend mark or whatever mark you want to place down as squad leader to be able to judge the distance and make sure that you're leaving enough room for the next garrison down. So under this example, for example, in ruins, it might be a good idea to get a garrison on this cemetery area or even this wheat field, right? You can get a garrison here, then maybe get a garrison here, And that's going to be good for defending ruins, right? It's not a bad situation to be in where you have these angles of attack, right? You can always do this and you can always do this. Like, a garrison doesn't really have to be right on the strong point for it to be good, or right on the edge of the map for it to be good. Garrisons that are further back are going to survive longer and are going to help your attack. A good thing to do when you're placing multiple garrisons is to wait 20 seconds after a spawn wave, after you see people spawn on your garrison, to put the other Gary down. This will stagger the spawn waves, so you always have the minimum amount of waiting time between spawn waves, which will benefit the team greatly. Alright, now let's talk about the importance of garrisons on corners. I've talked about this in a previous video, but let's go over it again and I'll include some more information on it. So for example, here in Delta 4, we can build a garrison here in the corner. This garrison will allow us to attack Carriage Depot, but it will also allow us to defend Dolgi Ravine. Just by spawning here, we are already in the Dolgi sector, so this is a great garrison placement to fall back on the attack and then quickly go back on the offense when needed, or if the situation presents itself. Let's say this is on the blue sector now and we've capped Carriage Depot. We build this red zone garrison to attack House of the Workers. Now, the genius thing about these garrisons is that as soon as we cap House of the Workers, we are meters away from starting cap on Shaped House. And this is why you sometimes see the last two sectors get capped one after the other one, because as soon as some cap pressure starts here, the enemy team can no longer spawn at their HQ. This is blocked off. So immediately after, basically, you cap this sector, you start capping Shaped House, the enemy team can't spawn here, they have to spawn here, and it's already far too late for them. This is why you always, as a defensive team, want to have garrisons built around several positions, because if you do start getting some pressure in, you can use those garrisons to fall back and turn a very certain defeat into a possible victory later on if you didn't have these red garrisons here. If House of the Workers falls, you don't have a garrison on Shaped House, you are done. And the best way to get these garrisons going in these corners is to prepare early for them with a commander supply drop. So at the start of the game, let your commander know, ideally you want to do a double drop, right? A double drop with your support. One support drops a 50 bucks, you kill him or he redeploys, you get someone else to spawn a support, you drop another 50 bucks, you got 100 supplies for a red zone garrison. Red zone garrisons, by the way, are increasingly important when you're dealing with this kind of layout situation where it's a straight line, so there's no possibility of flanking really from the south side, for example here on Rue de Gambasville. So red zone garrison placement takes a really important role here, and placing them further back so they enable a long flank using OPs, then you can place another garrison here once you start clearing Rue, and make sure this garrison is not going to get blocked by enemy infantry nearby. Then those garrisons are really important. Place them further back. Don't start with this one, start with this one further back, and then make your way in. All right, going back here to Stalingrad. As I mentioned at the start of the game, you can request from the commander that he drops supplies, for example here or around this area, or here, for example, to make sure that at some stage in the game, you can go into this position, get a red zone in, and then just keep pushing. And you don't have to stop to do the double drop situation and so on. If you do this at the start of the game or in a very crucial moment, like say, for example, the fight over mid has been just incredible, you'll be fighting over it for 10 minutes, then if you drop supplies further back, chances are nobody's going to be focused on those supplies and they are going to forget about them or not even see them in the first place because everyone's attention is somewhere else. So keep that in mind, especially if you're playing Commander, for where you can drop supplies. Drop them where you think nobody's going to look for them, or, if you drop them at the beginning of the game, then you're already set up for a garrison later on, unless you drop them in the middle of the road where they will get seen. But, ideally you want to drop them in areas where it's going to be hard for the enemy to locate those supplies, even if they saw the drop go ahead. All right, and that's going to be basically it for this video. The important thing with garrisons is that you need to use garrisons to open up different angles of attack. Just placing 2 garrisons, for example, these garrisons up north here, they kind of offer the same north attack angle, right? Like, not really, but, you know, it's not like you're getting one on the side or anything. So red zone garrisons are extremely important to do that, to open up new areas of flanking, new areas of attack onto the enemy. Think about your garrison placements as a fork. So if you have only one, that's a single tooth fork, basically, that's going to be really bad at doing pretty much anything. Try and extend and have at least a 3-pronged attack, basically, that's going to allow you to overwhelm the enemy at a variety of different angles. But do keep in mind that you want to put your red zone garrisons far away. You ideally want to put the red zone garrison somewhere where it's always going to be open, and then use your OPs to bridge the gap here. You know, you put your OP there and then you start your assault on the A8 network. Do not think of red zone garrisons in the same way of attack garrisons or other garrisons on the blue zone, because they serve other purposes and work other ways. One last note about half tracks is that half tracks, due to the 60-second timer, are really bad garrisons to begin with. So ideally, you want to use them for just as a backup support role for a garrison, maybe somewhere where you can't place a red zone garrison, or where you do have a red zone garrison that's constantly being locked. So you want to drive a half track there and maybe have that backup. And I really like using them as a backline defense, because, for example, let's say we get a half track. Let's do a half track with this symbol. Let's say we put a half track here, right? That's going to serve as a backup for Rue de la Gare and as a backup for a potential attack. Say we lose our attack garrisons, we still have that half track to enable us to go quickly onto the attack again and get those garrisons up again. And conversely, you can also use this half track, move it up later, you know, if you're starting to make some headway, but the garrisons you have are being taken down or they're not enough to sustain the attack, then you can move that half track a bit further up on the side or something, like from this location to this location, and get a quick-ish attack garrison this way. Now, again, the 60-second timer on the half track for spawning is a long time. Think about it this way: it takes 2 minutes to cap a sector in Warfare, so the half track only really gives you maybe 1 or 2 spawns by the time you've capped, or by the time the enemy has capped. So keep that in mind. Also, the fuel cost is pretty high. So if you're not winning the tank battle, do not invest on half tracks unless you really have a very pestering recon squad. But that's not even gonna work, because if you have a good recon squad, they're just gonna call artillery on that half track that's on the back line, and the garrison's gonna get destroyed anyway. Alright guys, that's gonna be it for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I didn't want to make it super long or anything, but I think I gave the amount of information that I intended to. So give it a like if you liked it. And as always, thank you for watching, and I hope I will catch you in the next one.